In a recent study published in JAMA Network Open, a team of researchers investigated the potential use of attention to motherese speech as a diagnostic character for autism spectrum disorder and evaluated its association with social and language abilities. What is motherese speech? Motherese is a specific form of speech used by parents to address a child or infant. It is also called baby talk, caretaker speech, infant-directed speech, child-directed speech, child-directed language, caregiver register, parentage, emotional infant-directed speech, or simply IDS. Motherese is characterized by a sing-song pattern of intonation that differentiates it from the speech used with other adults or adult-directed speech, ADS. For example, motherese has higher and wider pitch, slower speech rate, and shorter utterances. Here is a short clip of infant-directed speech, or motherese.
Oh, a bunny and a mouse.
Have you watched the 2004 movie Meet the Fockers? Here's a short clip. It turns out that baby talk is not that simple.
Who's this little guy?
This is our grandson, little Jack.
A little baby. How are you, little Jack?
Hey,
How are
Dad,
you?
don't infantilize him. Just talk to him like a person.
What are you talking about? He's a baby. I'm going to talk to him like he's a baby.
He likes me.
So what's the big deal of motherese? What are the benefits of motherese? Studies have shown that infants prefer and respond better to motherese than to regular prosody, which is typical for adult-directed speech. Infants who experience motherese are able to recall words more effectively than infants who do not. Children of depressed mothers who do not regularly use motherese display delayed language development. In fact, even when depressed mothers provide the infants with positive faces, infants do not respond to the attempts at motherese, and in turn do not benefit from this important route for language acquisition. This 2010 study provides some evidence for children's preference for motherese. This 2010 study, entitled Language or Music, Mother or Mozart, Structural and Environmental Influences on Infants' Language Network. It was published in the journal Brain and Language. This study used fMRI, which is functional magnetic resonance imaging, to study the organization of brain activity in 2-month-old infants when listening to 3 types of stimuli: music, mother's voice, and the stranger's voice. There are a total number of 24 infants who participated in this study. The figure summarizes the major findings of this study, and we focus on children's responses to the mother's voice versus the stranger's voice. The red bar indicates these children's left hemisphere responses to the 2 types of stimuli, and the green bar indicates the children's right hemisphere responses to the 2 types of stimuli. And what we see here is that the left hemisphere of the infants was more activated when responding to mother's voice than to a stranger's voice. What we see here is that the red bar for the mother's voice is taller or is higher than the red bar for the stranger's voice. So this shows that these infants seem to prefer the mother's voice and this was reflected in the responses of the brain. And of course, this figure also shows that there is a significant left-right hemisphere asymmetry for both mother's voice and the stranger's voice. In other words, it provides some evidence for the dominance of the left hemisphere for language. So we have just seen that children who are typically developing, they prefer motherese. But children with autism spectrum disorder, they prefer computer-generated voices to motherese. In fact, it has been found that in high-risk infants, preference for speech at 12 months is associated with autistic-like behaviors at 18 months. And in low-risk infants, preference for speech is associated with language ability. Now let's look at the study that seems to suggest that levels of attention to motherese speech can be used as an early marker of autism spectrum disorder. The main research question of this study is this: can levels of attention toward motherese speech indexed through eye tracking be used as a diagnostic marker of autism spectrum disorder, ASD? And are they associated with social and language abilities? To see whether attention to motherese speech can be used as an early marker of ASD, these researchers recruited 653 toddlers aged between 12 to 48 months through community referrals or population-based screening using a checklist for infants and toddler development that can detect autism spectrum disorder as early as 1 year. The evaluations were carried out every 9 to 12 months till the third birthday. Licensed psychologists administer various assessments and motherese eye tracking tests. The toddlers in this study were presented with a series of 3 paradigms designed to qualify the interest in motherese speech. Each of the 3 paradigms consisted of 2 movies placed side by side, with one side always containing an actress speaking in the motherese style, using speech that contained high rates of questions, inflections, and emotional prosody. Here are some illustrations of the 3 paradigms. A illustrates the motherese versus traffic paradigm. In this case, the contrasting video on the right showed vehicles moving on a highway, accompanied by traffic noises and car horns. B illustrates the motherese versus techno scenario, or the motherese versus techno paradigm. In this case, the vehicle noise movie was replaced with numbers and abstract shapes moving around on the screen and the sound of the music chords. C illustrates the motherese versus flat effect paradigm. In this case, the 2 screens contained the same actress reading the same script, one in motherese and the other in a flat, monotone voice. Let's look at the findings of this 2023 study that has attempted to investigate whether levels of attention to motherese can be used as an early marker of autism spectrum disorder. The first finding: levels of fixation on motherese speech were high in toddlers without ASD, but significantly reduced in toddlers with ASD. Second finding: if a toddler fixated on motherese speech at or below 30%, the probability of that toddler being accurately identified as ASD was 94%. Third finding: When toddlers with ASD were stratified as having low, middle, or high levels of attention toward motherese speech, significant differences in social and language abilities between the subtypes were observed. So here we see the expressive language skill and the receptive language skill of the three groups of children with autism at the different levels of attention to motherese. What we see here is that those children with autism who have the highest level of attention to motherese also had the highest level of expressive language and receptive language. And those children with autism who have the lowest level of attention to motherese speech also had the lowest level of expressive language and receptive language. These findings suggest that levels of attention to motherese speech may be a diagnostic and a prognostic marker of autism spectrum disorder. Thank you for watching. If you are still here, I would invite you to watch a video presentation by Dr. Fernald. Dr. Fernald is one of the world's leading experts in infant-directed speech. In the presentation, Why Talking to Little Kids Matters, Dr. Fernald explains how the quality of our interactions with infants and young children affects their brain and language development for life.